Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by State Farm.
Welcome to Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. It is the playoffs, baby, and we're here to get you set for those first-round matchups. Lots of news to get to off the top, but first, let's check in with our usual Sunday crew. I'm Liz Loza. We have Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tank Williams, and our betting analyst, Minty Betts, getting ready for Week 15. All right, we got to recap some scheduling changes due to COVID-19 outbreaks for a few teams. Yesterday's Vegas-Cleveland matchup was postponed to Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern, so we'll be treated to a Monday night football doubleheader. Additionally, the Seahawks at the Rams and the Eagles at Washington games were postponed to 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday night. A reminder, all fantasy points will be scored to Week 15 in those contests. Andy, good luck with that, my friend, Mr. Behrens, will have a little more strategy advice when it comes to waivers and sit-starts for those games in a few minutes. Now that we're all up to date, all of us are going to need a fantasy hero for our postseason roster. So who are you hoping pulls through? Andy, since you're so brave this week, let's start with you.
A couple things I need. Number one, I've had the Miami Dolphins defense stashed for this matchup against the Jets for weeks in a bunch of leagues. I need them to go off. They've been very bankable lately. Last five weeks, they've given us 4 different double-digit fantasy performances, so I need that to continue this week against the Jets.
Matt, are you looking at defenses, or are you looking for an offensive player to help you here?
Obviously, I'm looking for an offensive player, and I have, for the first time all year, have my eyes squarely on the Jacksonville Jaguars because, this is the Urban is gone, the revival of the Jags is here, the good vibes for the first time all year are flowing in Jacksonville, and your boy here is going to need one James Robinson to have the outrageous redemption game that many are hoping for. I know we're going to talk about him throughout the show. I'm going to need it because I ran into Travis Kelce in the first round, and that is just a very tough scene for me.
Oh, tough scene indeed. Tank, what about you?
Well, in one of my leagues, I have Travis Kelce. I have also stashed the Dolphins defense for today. But I need Leonard Fournette to keep that same energy he's had the past few weeks. I don't necessarily need 4 tub, Lenny, but I need some of that against the Saints in order for me to keep my playoff hopes alive in one of my leagues.
Look at you teasing our fantasy face-off a little bit later, but on the wrong side of things. Well done, Tank. For me, it's Kyler Murray. I am heavily invested in the dual-threat quarterback who just lost his #1 receiver for the remainder of the regular season. But I'm hoping he can stay healthy and crush in matchups against the Lions, Colts, and Cowboys. Minty, what's buzzing at the sports book ahead of Week 15? It's got to be a lot.
Yeah, so many line movements, so many lopsided bets, but 2 matchups that I'm really interested in seeing play out will be the Bills-Panthers game as well as the Cowboys-Giants game, because those are 2 matchups with the most money and the most tickets on, oddly, today. So I'm kind of expecting an upset in one of those games. Hopefully it's the Bills game, but yeah, wild stuff here at the books this morning.
We'll dig into that a little bit later. For right now, though, we know you have questions with the stakes this high, so please get them to us by using the hashtag AskFFL on Twitter or drop one in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can on the show. Plus, Scott Pianowski is answering questions all morning long right there at that Yahoo Fantasy handle. All right, now let's turn our attention to the injury reports. James Conner was listed as questionable this week with an ankle injury, but he is active against Detroit this morning. Dallas running back Tony Pollard is active today against New York. He was limited this week with a foot injury. Denver running back Melvin Gordon dealing with a couple of injuries. He's expected to play, however, against the Bengals. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson is listed as questionable this afternoon. He has a bone bruise in his foot, and there was some hope he might go, but the Ravens will decide pre-game. Okay, that is the latest. Now it's time to get into our first over-under. Matt, can you please kick us off?
Yes, let us begin the first over-under of this week. And, this is an interesting one, like I mentioned up at the top. It's James Robinson, and it's going against the Houston Texans, who just got run all over by Rashad Penny last week. That's a sentence I didn't think I'd say here in 2021, but a surprising year it has been. We're going to set the line here at 89.5 total yards, and oh baby, not just because I need it, I'm going over on this one. I mean, usually for the 2021 Jacksonville Jaguars, the most interesting days of the week has been Tuesday to Saturday, because it's like, what's going to come out about Urban Meyer during this whole thing? But now we've got, Darrell Bevell smirking at the press conference about how he's going to, match Urban's record. The good vibes are flowing through Jacksonville. The good matchup is here for James Robinson. The guy's a good player, despite the fact the previous head coach kept trying to replace him. I mean, I feel like I can lock in a sweep now, but why don't we just go ahead and hear everybody's answers too? Liz, starting with you.
All right, let's go through the motions. James Robinson has battled injuries, game script, and Urban Meyer, and has still managed to be top 15 in rushing yards and total touchdowns. You know why? Because he's good, and a smart coach might have played him ahead of somebody called Carlos Hyde, who, by the way, is inactive today. You mentioned the matchup, Matt. It is obviously sweet against the Texans' number 28 ranked run defense per DVOA. Also, the Texans have allowed the second most rushing scores on the season, just behind the Jets at 22. So give me the over.
Yes, love it. Great points all around there. Andy, why don't you add to the pile here? There's no way you're going to go against the good vibes.
Yeah, listen, I set this line, and honestly, I should have set it at like 110. I don't know, 119, something like that. This is just way too low. It's Houston. Houston is dead last against the run. You said it. They just got steamrolled by Rashad Penny, of all people. Wild season for James Robinson, right? Until the Jags let go of Urban Meyer. James Robinson was the only person who ever faced consequences for anything in Jacksonville this year. They yank him off the field, right? He hasn't played even 65% of the snaps in any game since mid-October, which is crazy, because he's averaging 4.8 yards per carry and he's verifiably great. He's awesome. He gets Houston. He's going easily over this total.
There's about like 45 times we should have known that the Urban Meyer era was doomed when you go down the list, but one of the ones was definitely when he tried to replace the only good player on the roster in April's draft. But enough of Urban Meyer, enough of the Jags. Let's send it over to Tank to talk single game DFS.
Holla! It's time for our surprisingly great picks presented by State Farm. Now, my DFS value plays can fit in any budget, just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates with coverage that meets your needs. Now, let's dig into our Sunday night matchup where the New Orleans Saints fight to keep their playoff hopes alive against their division rival, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a game that I expect the Bucs to win. And as Lizzie said, I've already kind of talked about one of the players that we're going to talk about in face-off today. But let's talk about him again. Leonard Fournette at $26. Now, the Cowboys averaged 6.1 yards against the Saints team. The Eagles rushed for 242 yards, and even the Bills, who refused to run the rock, rushed for 113 yards. And so I feel like this is a setup where Leonard Fournette had a kind of off game against the Saints earlier in this year. I expect him to ball out today. And Lizzie, yes, I gave y'all your talking points, but that's just because I like my avocados extra creamy. Now, moving on to Taysom Hill at $30. He's going against that Tampa Bay defense that gives up the 5th most fantasy points to fantasy quarterbacks. But yet at the same time, what's an interesting nugget is that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also give up the 6th most rushing yards to fantasy quarterbacks. So I really like that, where my man Taysom Hill, even though he has that finger, nothing wrong with those legs, so I expect him to be churning. I think he'll probably end up stealing some tubs away from Alvin Kamara. That's why I'm probably going to put Kamara on my bench and start Leonard Fournette today. In that wide receiver, I'm going with Chris Godwin. I'm going with him as my stud, my superstar, my game changer in this one, just because we already know Marshawn Lattimore eats up my man Mike Evans. And so that Saints defense is trash against the slot receiver. And Chris Godwin has just been eating up defenses the past few weeks, like over 100 yards in the past 3 games, and I think that continues this week. So that's why I'm going with my man Chris Godwin as my superstar today. Now, moving on to Minnesota versus Chicago. Like, we know these Minnesota Vikings, they love their drama. They love it between the white lines on game day, and obviously they also like it midweek too, where Rashad Breeland just got the boot for getting into an argument with the coaches and all that. But I'm here to give y'all some fantasy advice to help stuff your pockets, not gossip at the water cooler. We were still in the office at the water cooler, but I digress. So at wide receiver, I'm going with Darnell Mooney. My Darnell Mooney, he has that Vikings defense that gives up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. My dude has been hating on my projections the past couple of weeks. So, Darnell, it's time for you to totally redeem yourself in this matchup that you should not and cannot lose and ball out, because I also have you on one of my fantasy rosters. Now, flip it over to the Vikings. I'm going with Justin Jefferson. Now, this is easy. Still no Adam Thielen. We know the Vikes like to play in shootouts, and he's going to be about the only cat they throw the ball to. I mean, the Chicago Bears, I believe they give up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. This is a nice setup for my man, Justin Jefferson. I expect him to ball. Y'all seen what this dude been doing the past few weeks. Just go ahead and put him in your lineup and then just reap the rewards. But as my stud in this game, yeah, I ain't scared. Justin Fields. Yeah, now this dude has used his legs and balled out against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't win that game. Then he came out against a tough Green Bay Packers team and showed that he could fling that thing around in the air. So I'm expecting him to put it all together on Monday Night Football. We know the Vikings like to play close. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. Whether they win and lose, I expect my boy Fields to ball out. And so make sure you have him plugged in as your superstar in that Monday Night Football slate. And now, remember that whether you lace them up on Sundays or you're looking to lock in your lineup last minute with us, State Farm offers surprisingly great rates on our car insurance. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Get a quote today.
All right, let's talk about the postponements right now. Liz mentioned them at the top. We'll go over them again here. We'll just talk about a couple of strategic points related to this situation. We've had this drill before, right? This was all last season. 3 games have been moved due to COVID breakouts, obviously. Vegas and Cleveland to Monday, Seattle, LA, and Washington, Philly to Tuesday. Again, we've had this drill before. We've been through it. We know how to get through this. All stats are going to count in week 15. Liz has already touched on that. Waiver processing, that's bumped back 1 day. So instead of overnight Wednesday, it's going to be overnight Thursday. If you're the type of person who gets up at like dawn on Wednesday to see who didn't get claimed, you're going to be doing that on Thursday this week. It's a minor change. In addition to giving COVID positive players a day or two to clear the list, this is also, in a way, this is good for anybody who's recovering from injury right now. This is particularly good for Jalen Hurts, Terry McLaurin, Miles Sanders, guys like that. So it's not all bad. Considering the intensity of the COVID situation in the NFL right now, I think my general advice would be that if you are currently undecided about 2 players, right? It's a toss-up, it's a coin flip. I would play whichever dude is actually active first. I would play the guy who's playing today. I wouldn't risk a DNP. People are still hitting the list. It's a problem, it's a concern. Also, the final thing that I'm going to mention here, and it's probably the most important, with these Monday and Tuesday games, get those players in flex spots if possible. Do it right now. Do it right now while you're watching the show. You want to maximize your replacement options if things take a turn for those guys. So just take care of that business right now. That's all you got to do. Again, we've been through this before. This was the story of 2020. We'll get through it this week as well. Now let's send it to Minty to see what's trending in the sportsbook.
All right, guys, welcome to the Sportsbook. Let's get to some betting activity and trends for the day. The Bills-Panthers game is actually the most bet on game this week, oddly, and thus making the Bills minus 13.5 the most bet team on the board as well. I don't know if I really trust the Bills to win by 2 touchdowns over the Panthers. Next, best teams against the spread to kind of help you guys make money. The Packers, Cowboys, Cardinals, Colts, and Patriots. And the worst teams against the spread may not surprise you. The Steelers, Washington, Texans, Bears, Jags, and Jets. Good luck to you guys today. I will be back in a bit with my best bets for week 15.
Let's get to our first check-in on social media this morning and answer some roster questions. Don't forget to send your questions to the hashtag AskFFL. Our first tweet comes from Sean, and Sean asks, Miles Sanders or Donta Foreman? Andy, you just talked about selecting a player that you knew was going to go. Are you following that train of thought here as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't actually think these two are particularly close. I'm not the biggest Foreman fan, but I'm definitely playing him against Pittsburgh. We just saw those mile-wide rushing lanes that Dalvin Cook had in that Vikings game against the Steelers. Steelers defense isn't any good. That's not the way we think of them. That's not, what they've been historically. But they are plenty sketchy this year. And Foreman, even though he's not, he had the most touches last week for Tennessee, which was good. He's still only playing about a third of the snaps, and it's still basically a job share. But he's the guy that they really like to go to in early downs. And if he sees rushing lanes that look anything like what Dalvin Cook just dealt with, he's going to crush it. I think Foreman's a very strong play here.
All right, Matt, I'm going to give you this next one. It is from Karep, and Karep asks, Dak Prescott or Tom Brady? Can't wait to hear your take.
I appreciate the non-PPR note there. I do think, Brady's got some more receiving upside in this game. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough tiebreaker there between the two. Look, I think there is some sketchiness between the Saints and like the Tom Brady-led Bucks. Like those Saints have kind of had their number. But listen, I'm not going away from Brady in this spot. Like Tank mentioned up at the top here, there are some areas where the Bucks can absolutely attack the Saints, most notably to Chris Godwin over the middle. Rob Gronkowski's back too. Leonard Fournette is a little banged up as well, so maybe that leads to more Brady action through the air. And frankly, on the other side of it, I kind of need to see Dak put together a good game here before benching him, or like benching Tom Brady for him. I mean, obviously you're not going to go to like the quarterback streaming area over Dak against the horrible Giants, but if these are your two options, I'm feeling a little bit better about Brady right now.
Very well. Next question is for you, Tank. It is from James, and James has a question between a running back and a wide receiver, Javonte Williams, not 100% healthy, or Deontay Johnson in a favorable matchup.
Wow. Oh, man. And I have Deontay Johnson, too. You already know who I'm going with. I know he's going against my Titans, but I'm not a homer. Like, I'm going to give you that good advice that you're looking for right now. And Deontay Johnson may be the highest scoring fantasy wide receiver on today's slate. I don't know. I mean, we got some games that's suspended, postponed, and all that stuff. Like, this dude is a target monster. He has probably one of the best matchups on the slate. He's Big Ben's go-to guy. And when I look at the running backs for Denver, both of them are banged up. And yet, at the same time, you still don't know who's going to get the rushing tubs. I mean, we thought that Javonte Williams had sealed his fate when he balled out against Kansas City. And my man, Uncle Melvin, just came right back like nothing ever happened and then got all the tubs last week. So I'm going with the known quantity. I'm going with the guy that I need to ball out today. Deontay Johnson, do your thing, boy.
Very good. All right. This next question is, you know what, Tank? I'm going to have you intro this next one. Can you say this human's name, please?
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
No, it's from Julio. Nice. A question from Julio.
Oh,
Tank,
my bad. Man, I missed the layup. Well, I be damned. Julio!
Now you got to answer it, friend. All right. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Dawson Knox, or Rashad Penny? Who are you taking?
Man, actually, the Bills need to go ahead and bounce back, and I expect it to be Dawson Knox. Like, we know they don't like to run the ball, and man, Dawson Knox has been that dude. The way he was balling out against Tampa Bay in that comeback last week, I mean, he showed me a lot. I felt like he was kind of battling through, trying to get his hand back right, that he injured against Tennessee, and it took a couple games like you would expect with most injuries, but like, looked like he got his mojo back, and so I expect that to continue today.
All right, now it is time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we return, we've got sneaky plays for Week 15 with our fantasy freebies. Be sure to stay with us.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah, baby.
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free, live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
Most of you folks playing this week don't need any extra help because your rosters were good enough to get you here. But if you're one of these teams that limped into the playoffs, we're going to help you out here with our fantasy freebies. That's the people who are 25% or fewer started across Yahoo leagues. We're going to jump into some of these sleeper plays. And by the way, since we're doing this early in the show, that means we're going to give you a little panic later in the show with off their game later. That's good stuff. Anyways, let's start here positive, and let's go with Tank here and give us your sleeper of the week.
Man, I already talked this dude up with my Monday Night Football picks, but let me go ahead and slap you over the head again. Justin Fields of Dreams, Aubergine. Like, this dude has an amazing matchup going against the Vikings where they give up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And what I like about my man is that obviously he started off slow. Dude has scored over 20 fantasy points in 3 out of the last 4 games. So I like the trajectory. I like the way that he's trending. We already know what the Vikings love to do. They love to play in close games. They love to play in shootouts. They love to win some. They love to lose some. What's better than beating the Pittsburgh Steelers team in a wild one at home, then going on the road the very next week against a division foe and losing to the Chicago Bears? I want that energy, and I want it on Monday Night Fields football.
Oh, well, we love to hear that. Andy, I'm sure you love to hear that. Follow up those good Bears vibes with another sleeper for this week.
Yeah, absolutely love to hear it. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy has 24 targets over his last 2 games. That's 1 fewer target than Cooper Kupp has over his last 2 games, right? Like, he's nearly at the top of the league in these past 2 weeks. He's caught 18 of those balls for 159 yards. Of course, he had the game-winning touchdown a couple weeks ago. That felt like a signature breakout performance for him. We got no Hawkinson this week. We still got no DeAndre Swift for the Lions. It's a match against Arizona that isn't great, but they're going to be chasing points all afternoon. I'm following the targets here. I think he probably sees another 10, 12, 14 chances in this one, and there's no way that doesn't translate into a big week.
Okay,
100% agree with you.
Brown over Cooper Kupp.
There you go. Well, listen, Andy did say you don't want to be waiting on these COVID games, Tank. So, yeah, you probably want to go ahead and make that line of decision right there. Look, I liked St. Brown last week. Obviously, that worked out. I liked this guy last week as well, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That did not work out, but I'm going back to the well this week. I mean, give me a break. We know that this guy can make big plays at any given moment. Trying to pinpoint those moments, as I'm saying here, is rather difficult. However, this looks like a great spot, even with him dealing with a little bit of a back injury right now. That's fine. He can still run those go routes against a Ravens secondary that has ranked bottom 3 in explosive pass rate allowed for months and months and months, and then just this morning had to place Jimmy Smith on the COVID-19 list. He was like their one healthy, established cornerback. Now he's gone. If MVS doesn't hit one of those bombs in this game, I mean, I'm going to just forget it and, like, stop trying to chase this whole thing. But we'll see. I think he's a pretty good upside flex play if you do need the ceiling throw. One guy who is not a sleeper and is an every week start despite all of the worries about another injury is Austin Eckler. Let's see what him and Liz had to say this week.
All right, Austin, the fantasy playoffs are here, and the margin of error is slim, to say the least. Managers have to make some really tough decisions, so we are here to help them break ties with a game of Would You Rather.
Oh, boy. All right, let's try it out.
Sunday night, Leonard Fournette and the Bucs host Alvin Kamara and the Saints. This is a matchup of two top 12 running backs, both of whom cleared 130 total yards a week ago. Now they face the other's top-ranked run defense. So, Austin, would you rather have Fournette or Kamara?
Man, this was another tough one because both these players have been used in similar ways this season. Fournette's been involved a lot more in the passing game than we expected when he's really shown up this year. So shout out to Fournette for doing his thing. And we all know Kamara was involved in every part of the offense, whether it's passing or running the ball. But I think the Bucs and Fournette's got the upper hand. It's just his time of possession and going to give them more opportunities to get him the ball, and he's going to have more opportunities to rack up some fantasy points.
In Week 8, when these two teams played, the New Orleans Saints defense held Leonard Fournette to under 50 scrimmage yards. I absolutely buy into the angry Tom Brady narrative. I think that'll extend to Leonard Fournette, who actually leads all running backs in targets. So you're right about his involvement in the passing game. In this situation, I am going to take the running back that is attached to the GOAT, who is also averaging 42 pass attempts per game. I'll take Fournette. For our last one, let's stay in the backfield. In fact, just one backfield. The Packers' dynamic duo of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. This has become a pretty straight timeshare, particularly after Jones sprained his knee back in Week 10. Dillon has nearly doubled Jones in touches over the last 4 games, but Jones can be much more prolific as a receiver. So who are you taking in Week 15?
Watching A.J. Dillon on Sunday Night Football just reminded me how big this man actually is. And he was just barreling through the Bears and just running them over. I was like, yeah, that is a big human being, 250 pounds. It's crazy that we play the same position. But then Aaron Jones came in, and as you said, down the red zone, he was getting the touches down there. And look, if he's healthy, I think he's going to have more upside and actually get more of the carries, get more of his balance back. I'm going to say Aaron Jones, so I'm going to lean more towards him, although A.J. Dillon is definitely going to be a part of the scheme.
Matt LaFleur likes a timeshare. When Jamal Williams was on the squad and both he and Aaron Jones were healthy, they split in a 60-40 snap share pretty much. So it makes sense that A.J. Dillon is going to be involved. And when Aaron Jones isn't available, we're going to see him involved in the passing game. But I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm going to take the Packers' number 2 receiver, who happens to play running back, Aaron Jones.
All right, it's make your pick time. We're taking a few of your social questions. It's me, it's Harmon. Hopefully we can agree on a few things here. Let's start off with a question from Hot Stove Steve. He's asking Van Jefferson, Brandon Cooks, Chase Edmonds, Russell Gage for 2 spots. We don't know the scoring format. That is always an issue when Russell Gage is involved. Matt, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, it's kind of an issue when Chase Edmonds is involved too, as most of his juice is going to come through the passing game. Although I do feel pretty good about him. Decent matchup against the Lions. I think you go back to Brandon Cooks, though, is kind of the one guy I feel like is a lock here. Davis Mills actually played pretty well. I feel like this could be one of those beautifully bad shootout games between the Jags and the Texans. Obviously the post-Urban Meyer bump for the Jags going on for them. Davis Mills played pretty well last week. I think Cooks is the one guy I'm locking in here. And Andy, this is one of those situations where I feel like Van Jefferson is the next best play of this group. But do I want to wait without a viable alternative for that Tuesday game? I probably don't. And so I feel like I'm going to go to Edmonds there.
Yeah, I'll say first of all that if that Houston-Jacksonville game just turns into a shootout between Brandon Cooks and James Robinson, that's fine with me. That's what I'm looking for. That is exactly what I'm looking for today. And I agree with you on Brandon Cooks. Like, he's the obvious play out of this thing. If it's full PPR, I think I'd probably go Russell Gage just as a high floor option, because it sure seems like he's going to see 10, 12 targets basically every week for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. Don't mind Chase Edmonds, but if it's standard and I'm just chasing a touchdown, maybe I go Van Jefferson. Otherwise, it's going to be Russell Gage for me. Let's take another question here, and this one is from Sports Pawn Don asking Chase Claypool. That was an adventure of a game that he's coming off. Chase Claypool, Devontae Smith, Darnell Mooney, Saquon, and Devontae Parker. That's a lot of names. We need 2 wide receiver spots to fill here, 1 flex position. Which 2 should I bench? Let's see. I'm going to play Saquon in this one for sure. I like Devontae Parker this week against the Jets with Jalen Waddle out. He's still on the COVID list. It should basically be Myles Gaskin, Parker, and Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins in this one. I am also going to play, I need the right answer to be Devontae Smith, but I think I'm actually going to play Darnell Mooney here. I agree with Tank. I love this spot against Minnesota. He's probably the Bears' #1 right now. So I'm going to go with those three: Parker, Barkley, Mooney. Do you agree, Matt Harmon?
No, I think I'm going to ride the Chase Claypool roller coaster instead of Darnell Mooney. Look, it's a good matchup. Titans secondary, not that great, even if their pass rush is good and they could get after Ben Roethlisberger. The usage has been there for Chase Claypool. The targets have been there for him. And frankly, even like the fantasy finish was there for him last week, despite all of the controversy with the first down signal and all that type of stuff. I mean, hopefully he doesn't get benched, right, for being, making some questionable decisions out there. But yeah, I think I'm tempted to ride Chase Claypool over Darnell Mooney there.
It feels like a benching is perhaps in play, but I understand it. I totally get it. Next question here is from some combination of letters and numbers asking, need a wide receiver and a flex. It's Brandon Ayuk. It's a show favorite, Brandon Ayuk. Hunter Renfrow. I don't know what Chase we're talking about here, Jamar Chase or Chase Edmonds. Who knows? Who can say? And Gronk. They need high floors they've already started Herbert and Kelsey. They put up great numbers, so they just need floors here. Matt, who are you going with?
Yeah, don't really care that it's a standard format. I am going to go with Hunter Renfrow in this spot. I mean, well, it's troubling because it's a COVID game, right? And he and Brandon Ayuk are definitely close in the rankings. I don't know, Andy. Now that I say this, now I'm like, do I want to wait for the Hunter Renfrow experience? But they're not one of the teams that are dealing with the huge outbreak. So I feel pretty good about that one. I feel like you can lock Hunter Renfrow in. The usage has been fantastic, and he is an awesome player. Like, what were the Raiders doing not getting this guy featured earlier, basically? So he's the one guy I'm going with there for one of the spots, and then we need two here. We need a wide receiver and a flex.
Yep.
It's between Chase and Gronk here. All these guys are close in rankings, but I feel like I'm going to probably chase the potential touchdown upside with Rob Gronkowski. Do you agree?
I think if I'm playing two of these guys, I'm going to play Gronk and Jamar Chase. Again, I'm assuming that Jamar Chase is the one involved in the question. I don't think I could sit him. I get the argument for Renfrow. Like, he's like the one guy that they're going to throw to. But if it's not full PPR, I'm a little bit less interested. So for me, this is probably Gronk and Chase. And that is going to do it for this particular series of questions. But we're going to take more of your social questions later in the show. Don't worry about that. Right now, we're going to send it to Liz and Tank for just a clash of the Titans in fantasy face-offs.
Okay, Tank. It's face-off time, like Andy said, and we are taking similarly ranked players and making a case for why they should get the start here in the fantasy postseason. I'm taking Jalen Hurts on Tuesday, despite everybody's warnings not to take players playing on Tuesday. And you like Taysom Hill in primetime. I know you already like him in single-game DFS, but tell the people why once more.
I think for me, like, both of these guys have really good matchups, so let's not get it twisted. Like, we don't play both of these guys if we have them on our rosters, but we're just trying to needle over things. And my man Taysom Hill has a bum finger. He's actually overcome that bum finger in the past 2 fantasy albums where he's been running all over teams. My man Jalen Hurts, I have no legs. Like, he have a bum ankle, and like that's like his prized possession is his ankle, and he has no leg. And so I really just don't know how you'll be able to pick somebody who's like limited. He has like a flat tire on like his like #1 asset against a guy who's just been churning and more than likely going to steal tugs away from Alvin Kamara, which is why I'm going to have Kamara on my bench and playing Leonard Fournette. But go ahead, tell me why I should play Hurts over Taysom.
Okay, I will. Just give me a minute. So we are looking at 2 quarterbacks that we don't really trust as passers, but we appreciate them in fantasy for their mobility. Is Jalen Hurts limited? Maybe. We don't know for sure. Week 13 feels like 3 years ago. He gets extra days to get healthy on Tuesday night. Could Gardner Minshew show up? Maybe. Welcome to 2020. Welcome to 2020 2.0. That's 2021. So if I'm looking at the data in front of me, Hurts has been a QB 10. He's the QB 10 on the season. He's averaging close to 21 fantasy points per game. He's been a top 12 contributor in 10 of the 12 games he's played this season. And we look at the matchups. Washington has allowed more rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks than the Bucs have. So am I thinking like the way to beat the Bucs is obviously through the air, but limited fingers, limited talent as a passer for Taysom Hill? I think in a vacuum, I'm going to take Hurts. And you know what?
Yeah.
Let's see what you all think.
I will just add this little nugget that the
debate.
Bucs do give up the 6th most rushing yards to quarterback. So, I mean, he still has a really good matchup.
Washington
against the run,
football
but,
team is the 4th most. So it's an edge. Oh, snap! The people would rather start Jalen Hurts versus over Taysom Hill. How about that?
What else?
Nothing, Tank. Just silence. Fine. All right. Fine. I'm gonna go first this time, and I am gonna go with Leonard Fournette over Joe Mixon here. I'm gonna tell you why. I know you like Leonard Fournette too. You've already taken all my talking points, as you mentioned. The last time Fournette faced the Saints, he was held to under 50 scrimmage yards. I don't think that happens again. That also in that game, by the way, the Bucs lost by 9 points. Don't think that happens again either. Listen, Fournette is leading the position with targets at 77. He can't be as easily phased out of the game script if something were to go sideways, and it's not like things aren't going sideways every stinking minute right now. Mixon, on the other hand, only averaging 2.5 targets per game. I like the one attached to Tom Brady, and I think they bounce back nicely here. I don't know how you can fade Fournette even over Joe Mixon.
Because you're talking about targets. Targets, like, this is a running back comparison. And, like, I understand that, like, teams and running backs have been running against the Saints, but, like, look, remember what Dearness Johnson did against that Broncos defense, right? And then the Detroit Lions last week averaged 5.6 yards against that defense. And, like, at the same time, the Eagles rushed for over 200-something yards. And when I'm looking at a Cincinnati Bengals team that's struggling to get their act together, when they need to protect their quarterback from turning the ball over, what are they going to do? Give that ball to Joe Mixon. So you proved my point for me. You already said that my man Fournette has the GOAT, right? So you always have to worry about Brady throwing for like 5 tubs and my man Fournette maybe getting a passing touchdown or something like that. I don't know. But one thing I can guarantee this week is that Joe Mixon going to get all the fixings for the Bengals. So that's why he's going to be the dude that you play. And I'm kind of doing that reverse jinx thing too, because I already told you I'm playing Fournette. So if you can go ahead and give me 4 tubbies because I'm hating on you, hey, I'll gladly take it, my man Lenny.
I love the circular talk. It is brilliant. But finally, let's see what the people all thought. Oh, a dead tie. Fournette and Mixon 50-50. Interesting. So we'll see which way this one goes. In the meantime, we're going to take a break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we'll check in on what's trending and get to some player props for Week 15.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah,
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani Unleashed.
Yes.
Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free, live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
And we're back here on Fantasy Football Live. While you were gone, we were looking at what's trending on social media. Here are some buzzy names this morning. We've got Myles Gaskin, Donta Foreman, DJ Moore, and Michael Carter. Andy, Tank, let's start with the bread of this trending situation and discuss Myles Gaskin and Michael Carter. Let's start with Gaskin, right? Because I think there's a lot of questions about Miami. Philip Lindsay still on the COVID list. Salvan Ahmed activated off of it. Malcolm Brown, who we thought might be activated off of IR, was not, still not ready to come back from that quad injury, which makes Myles Gaskin really appealing, also noting that Jalen Waddle isn't on it. So Andy, where do you have him ranked? What are you foreseeing for Gaskin?
Yeah, I bumped him up again this morning too. I've got him right around RB, like a sort of fringy RB2, only because he's coming back, obviously off of an injury list, right? But I think he's still an RB2. If you're not going to start Myles Gaskin against the Jets, like, when are you ever going to play him? It is an absolute blow-up spot. We know that the run is going to be in play all day. He's not the most efficient back necessarily, but I think he's going to start in this one. I think he's going to see something close to his full workload. So, yeah, I can see 18 touches in this one. I don't know if it's going to be a great yardage total, but a really good shot of 1 or 2 touchdowns.
Tank, why don't you and I discuss Michael Carter? The rookie was activated off IR. Robert Salah said that he would have a, quote, significant role this week, Sunday, today, at Miami. Obviously, the matchup isn't really good, but Carter did average 7.75 targets per game from week 7 through 10 before getting injured in that week 11 game, ironically, versus Miami.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think he's a solid play. I mean, I remember earlier this season looking at Michael Carter and him having some tough matchups in front of him, yet his volume and usage in the passing game is really one of those things that just gives him a pretty decent floor. And I have to call out Matt Harmon for that. I mean, Harmon was on that dude early, and I was like, man, there's no way. I mean, this dude plays for the Jets, and he's, like, going against these tough matchups, but yet he balled. And so I expect in the matchup right here where it's a little tough, no matter what the game flow is going to be, I expect him to be heavily involved. And so I feel like playing Michael Carter today will be a solid play for fantasy managers. And can we please get a damn S on Myles Gaskin's last name? Gaskins, not Gaskin. I want Gaskins.
Would you rank Michael Carter behind Donta Foreman and Myles Gaskin since he is coming back from that injury?
I will rank him behind Myles Gaskin because, I mean, Myles Gaskin just has a, like, smash spot. When you look at Foreman, I would actually play Michael Carter over Deontay Foreman because, like Rev said, like, I mean, he's going to get some usage in the early downs, but it's a time-sharing tendency where I feel like Michael Carter is going to get all the volume in the run and pass game, so that's why I like him a little bit more than the Tennessee Titans running back.
All right, we managed to hit on 3 of those 4 players. So it's time to get back into the sports book. Let's move on. Minty and Matt are checking in on the latest player props over there. Guys, what do you have cooking?
Yeah, we got some interesting ones here. Starting off with Minty's first one. I talked about riding the Chase Claypool roller coaster a little bit earlier. Minty, sounds like you're joining me on this amusement ride here.
I am joining you on this ride. I like Chase Claypool to have over 4.5 receptions here at plus 110. Now, I'm really liking the plus money here. The Titans have one of the best rushing defenses on paper, so I don't believe we'll see Najee Harris get terribly far, which leaves room for Chase Claypool. He should have somewhat of a big game, and last week he recorded 8 receptions. He only needs 5 today, and I think that's very possible against a bottom-ranked Titans pass defense. So give me the over for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, again, the problem is not the production with Chase Claypool, at least of late. It's been, you know, how much of a goofball is he going to be and how much is Mike Tomlin going to get pissed about it. So there are a couple considerations there, but I love that you're starting off with an over at plus odds, Minty. We love to see it. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Gabe Davis, over 40.5 receiving yards for me at minus 115. Look, I'm not like the biggest Gabe Davis fan in the world, but plays a season high 83% of the snaps. Last week, no Emmanuel Sanders. And frankly, I think the Bills were smart to hedge their bets with Gabe Davis coming into this year. You know, that's why they signed Sanders, who's a reliable veteran. But, like, enough already with Emmanuel Sanders at this point in his career being, like, the deep threat for this team. It's time for them to fire Gabe Davis up. He's not a perfect player, but he can burn. I don't really care about the matchup against a tough Panthers secondary. I expect the Bills to be crushing in this game, and 40.5 is simply too low for the new number 2 receiver for the Buffalo Bills, who again brings that deep game versatility that I frankly think the Bills desperately need right now.
I don't hate this prop, and you say it's set too low. I think it's set a little too high, but in a good way. The books are expecting some production from him, and I say it's a little too high based off of his production in the last several weeks. But I think you can definitely sneak this one in, and I'm on the over with you there, Matt. And my next prop is going to be on Christian Kirk, over 54.5 receiving yards. Now, the Lions are allowing 8.2 passing yards per attempt, which is second most in the league. Christian Kirk has had such a great season and has gone over this total in 3 of his last 5 games. He's one of Kyler's main targets now that Hopkins is on IR. So I think this one is set pretty low, and I like the over on this one.
Minty taking 2 overs. We knew things was going to get weird here in week 15, but that is beautiful. We love to see it. I like AJ Green a little bit more than Christian Kirk, but I'm with you on the over on this one. I think Kyler Murray really rolls against the Lions. All right, last one here. I made an error on the outline, so this is going to say over, but I totally meant to say under when I wrote this thing here. I'm going under. It's going to say over when we throw the graphic up for Ezekiel Elliott. 78.5 rushing plus receiving yards, but I actually want the under here on Zeke's combined yardage. Because, listen, we've got reports that obviously Tony Pollard is going to play here. Just smart to not even throw the graphic up. I'm so sorry to all the producers. I really just realized this. I'm a terrible person, and I deserve all of the shame. Anyways, go under on Zeke, who also deserves the shame. Not to his own fault. It's because the Cowboys keep throwing him out there when he's clearly not healthy. Decent matchup against the Giants, Minty, but again, Tony Pollard's going to play. There's some reports that even Corey Clement could still be out there. Look at that. They changed this in real time. Shout out to you guys. I mean, you're the real heroes here, not me. I stink. I'm terrible. Also, Zeke's not going to do that well today, as I mentioned. Corey Clement might be playing a little bit. 3-way split. The Cowboys need to rest Zeke. I'm with them on this 3-way split here, Minty. Are you with me on taking the under for Zeke's combined yardage here?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, when you typed over, I was going to disagree with you, so I now agree with you on the under. I think 78.5 is very high, especially, I mean, even for both combined. I think, if anything, he reaches maybe like 40, 50 rushing yards and not that many receiving yards. So I like the under there with you. I think it'll just get barely under 78.
That's the problem, is I agree with you completely about that rushing yardage there, and I'm like, is the rest really coming? The juice is going to come in the passing game there? I don't think so. All right, well, that was a mess. We're all limping here to the end of the season, but nevertheless, you should watch more of that disaster show that you just saw with me here. Not Minty, she's great, but my disastrous self will be back with Minty 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern for Yahoo Sportsbook Live. I have been told, actually, Minty, that if I don't go 6-0 on my props this week, producer Kent told me they will replace me for the rest of the season. Kent doesn't realize that he promised me a nice little holiday break there, Minty, so I hope everybody enjoys my last show this week. I'm just kidding, but seriously, tune in later. It's going to be...
All right, over-under number 2 is going to be a player that we've already discussed a few times on this show. It's Taysom Hill. He's fun. I don't know if he's good, but he's fun. We're going to set the number here at 24.9 fantasy points. Does he get to 25 fantasy points? I will start us off on this one. It's a huge total. In a typical week, we may only get 5 or 6 quarterbacks who hit a number like this. We all understand the path that Hill has, right? He has 174 rushing yards over his last 2 games. It's pretty good by the standards of any position. It's particularly good for a quarterback. It gives him a very high floor. We just saw Josh Allen rush for 100 yards against this Tampa Bay defense. The problem is Josh Allen is the only quarterback this year to go for even 50 rushing yards against Tampa Bay. It's obviously a good run defense overall. They've been generous to opposing quarterbacks this year, but in the last 5 weeks, they've only allowed 7 passing touchdowns. So I think this is a good week for Taysom, but I don't think it's like a top 5, top 3 sort of fantasy week. I think he goes over 20, but I don't think he goes over 25. So I'm going to take the under on this one. Now, Matt, this is not a segment like the last one where you get to take both an over and an under on the same guy. You got to pick one here. You got to pick a lane. What's it going to be?
I'm really tempted after getting away with a mid flip there on the last one to do this again here. But no, I'll stick with the over. Look, we know the deal with Taysom Hill. The rushing yardage should be there. I agree with you. They are theoretically a really good defense there in Tampa Bay. That's legit, of course. But, Taysom Hill still can make it happen as a scrambler, even against some of these broken plays. And the Bucs, obviously the pass rush, the blitz has been there, of course. I think they get Taysom Hill out of the pocket. They get him moving there. I do think he goes over this total. The Bucs defense is still pretty flawed despite getting some guys back over the course of the season.
All right, Tank, break the tie.
Actually, I'm going over 2. You've heard me talk up Taysom Hill, some of the previous segments, and I'm going to, say it again. He has a decent matchup against Tampa Bay. They give up, the 6th most rushing yards to fantasy quarterbacks. I feel like that finger's getting healed, even though he really doesn't have anybody to throw it to but Kamara. That's good enough for him to at least get a tub. And then also, I feel like a lot of garbage time may be in play with this one because we have to remember, the Saints beat the Bucs, so I expect the Bucs to come out and smash today. So with that being said, if the Bucs are playing with a decent lead, all those garbage points and stuff add up. So can he get over 25 with that? I think so. But at the same time, I'm playing against Taysom Hill today. So if he doesn't produce and he doesn't go over and I get some kind of reverse jinx, I'm doing just fine that way too. So Taysom Hill, just do what you do.
Oh, that's how you like it. Either way, Tank wins. Perfect setup there. Okay, we're going to have one more over-under later in the show, but right now, let's send it to Liz for a little sleeper talk.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, let's get to some sleepers who could do damage for fantasy managers in the first round of the playoffs. And let's start by acknowledging that this week is messy, which means sleepers are all the more valuable. How about one attached to a quarterback who already has some antibodies? Allen Lazard drew a season-high 7 looks in Green Bay's Week 14 beatdown of the Bears. As evidenced by his 6 grabs for 75 yards and a score, the former Cyclone is back to health after missing time with a shoulder injury. With Randall Cobb out of the lineup, Lazard's target should be equally high on quantity and quality. The Packers traveled to Charm City on Sunday to take on a Ravens defense that gave up nearly 300 receiving yards to the run-loving Browns last Sunday. I expect that trend to continue and believe Lazard will take full advantage of Baltimore's Marlon Humphrey and Jimmy Smith-less secondary. Speaking of taking full advantage, what a great time to talk about Jacksonville. Everyone, including Vegas, is expecting that post-Urban bump, making the Jaguars potential fantasy darlings. But how about a tight end? James O'Shaughnessy has averaged 5.6 targets per game, drawing 6 looks in back-to-back efforts since returning from IR in Week 12. He's run at least 30 routes in 2 of his last 3 games. Today, he'll face a Texans defense that's allowed a generous 7 scores to the position if you're in a pinch, and really, who isn't? O'Shaughnessy is available in over 90% of Yahoo leagues. Matt, if you don't mind, let's check back in the chat and find out what's triggering the people today.
Well, there's a lot here, of course. Andy, I'm glad that you're here with me for this one. Oftentimes we get a question like this and we say, oh, what is this, an 8-team league? How do you have all these guys you could start? Well, listen, this is the fantasy playoffs. There's a lot of good teams alive here, Andy, including John Conglos' team in the YouTube chat. This is a PPR league, and he needs some help. Needs 3 out of these guys. Deebo Samuel, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, and Chris Godwin. Again, possible to have drafted that, and possible.
Wow.
Look, there's a reason, Andy, that he's here. John made it here because he drafted a good team. He's got good players here. Which guy are we benching out of this foursome? We can't even take the COVID opt-out thing.
Yeah, there's 4 guys here that I can't bring myself to bench. I don't know. This is a tough one. It's full PPR. Maybe I'm sending Deebo to the bench. Every answer seems wrong. Anybody I put on the bench here seems wrong. Godwin is a great PPR play. Deontay is a phenomenal PPR play. CeeDee Lamb's going to see a zillion targets. So. And Deebo is kind of a running back, not really getting it done on reception, so I don't think we're going to see necessarily a huge reception total there, which is kind of what I'm chasing here. I love him. I think he's probably going to finish top 10 in his position, but all these guys are going to finish top 10 at their position, so I guess I'm sitting Deebo.
Right, I feel like I trust the Dallas offense right now, not enough to really feel great about CeeDee Lamb, but I'm with you. I didn't have the stones to put Deebo in the off their game segment later on, but if somebody has gonna have taken you to the playoffs and then really let you down right here, this guy is just not getting enough receiving workload right now. But yeah, so I agree. I think he's the one of the 4 that you put on the bench, tough as it is. Last one we'll do here, Gray Wolf. You've sent this question in with the Christmas tree emoji, with the snowman, with the present, and let's unwrap this present for Gray Wolf. Got to play 2 here $1.5 PPR, Zeke Elliott, Darrell Henderson, or Jeff Wilson. Gosh, Andy, this is tough because it's kind of the flip side. I don't really want to play any of these guys, despite last question I wanted to play all of them.
Yeah, man, that's exactly right. Like even in a week last week when Tony Pollard couldn't even play, Zeke Elliott didn't handle a full workload. So that's a concern. Of these three guys, I would send Jeff Wilson to the bench. He was fine a week ago, but this is still like Deebo Samuel's run game, which is a weird thing to say. At least coming into the season, I wouldn't have imagined it that way, but he's been really fun. I don't see a path for Jeff Wilson to get more than 12, 13 carries in this thing. I don't think he's going to have some huge receiving workload, so he's probably the guy I leave on the bench.
Yeah, I hate the term fall into the end zone, but I feel like Zeke can actually fall into the end zone, like perhaps literally at this point, where Jeff Wilson not getting the money touches down there, not getting receiving work. I feel like he's the guy you send to the bench. All right, we have to send it to a break here on Fantasy Football Live. Kirk Cousins is sneaky ballin', especially against NFC North opponents, where he averages 318 passing yards against his divisional guys, but hasn't seen those mighty Bears yet. Will he clear a big line against them? We'll tell you right after this.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. Best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, time for our final over-under of the show, and it is on Kirk Cousins, as promised, going against the Chicago Bears. We're going to set the line here at 279.5 passing yards. And look, I love Justin Jefferson, love what I saw out of KJ Osborne as a vertical threat, but I am, unfortunately, going to go under here. I don't think they're going to need Kirk Cousins to do much to beat the Bears, and the Bears' run defense has been problematic. Basically, when they've lost guys like Khalil Mack, they're down a ton of players there. Akeem Hicks, what's going on over there? There's a lot of questions we could be asking about, like who's really playing for the Bears at this point, if you catch my drift. I do not think this team right now, that's 18th in rush EPA allowed since week 10, can do much to hold back Dalvin Cook coming off a monster game. Now he's got a long rest. I think they just run the hell out of the ball. Kirk Cousins doesn't have to do much, so I'll go under here. But Minty, how about you?
I agree with everything you just said, Matt. Chicago's allowing the most passing yards per attempt and some of the most passing touchdowns. Also, this is a divisional game. This is going to be close. I see a lot of running the ball. And since starting for the Vikings in 2018, Kirk Cousins has only passed this total once against the Bears. So I really like the under here as well.
Liz, if any week deserved a sweep of negativity, it's week 15. Can we get it here?
You asked for it and you got it. You also absolutely nailed the analysis that I was going to present when you started. I think this is game script. I think that Dalvin Cook is going to control the game. You mentioned he's coming off of that monster 222-yard effort, and he's had 10 days to rest coming off of it, no less. Only stat I'd care to contribute is that Cousins averaged over 312 passing yards per effort in the games in which Cook was not available. But when Cook was on the field, Cousins' average dropped to 263 passing yards per game. We know how healthy Cook is, and we know that the Bears' run defense, although I think Hicks should be back this week, is still far from 100%, so I too will take the under.
You gotta love just the sweep of unders. 'Tis the season. We love it. All right, now let's see what Tank has to say in terms of DFS plays. And I am very interested to hear this segment, Tank. Very interested.
What it do, baby? I know you're Harmon. It's your boy T-Money coming with my Week 15 ballers on the budget. Now, first, we starting off with the man who keeps doing this because I don't trust any of the trash quarterbacks on the roster this week, so I'm going with Aaron Rodgers. He's $32. He ain't cheap, but he's going against those Baltimore Ravens that give up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. This is a great matchup for my man A-Rod. It seems like every time we watch a Ravens game, when we think they have it, they give up a deep pass. And what? My man Harmer's already talking about MVS, Devontae Adams. I mean, one or both of these dudes, maybe even Lazard, somebody's going deep on the Ravens, probably multiple times. So $32, Aaron Rodgers against those Ravens secondary, and my man Jimmy Smith out now too. Oh yeah, I'm definitely taking that. Now at running back, I'm going with the dude, James Robinson. Like, we've been begging for this to happen, and now that Urban Meyer has finally kicked rocks, I feel like my man James can finally thrive. Like, we know he was dealing with that heel about a month or so ago. He's been healthy, kind of getting healthy over the past few weeks. Healthy because he hasn't really been playing a lot either, because they've been throwing old Dusty Carlos Hyde up in there. But now, Hyde's not playing, and my man J. Rod should get all the volume against the Houston Texans that give up a lot of fantasy points to running backs. This should be a smash spot, not only for Robinson, but for the Jags to hopefully get another win. Now at wide receiver, going against the Atlanta Falcons. Say it, buddy. Say it. Brandon Ayuk. This dude balled out against the Cincinnati Bengals. I still don't know how in the hell he got in the end zone on that overtime play. But the dude, I've been dogging you all season, and baby, you finally came through. Brandon Ayuk, you better do it again this week going against the Atlanta Falcons in that juicy matchup. The Falcons give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. But hey, I'm going to tell you one thing, Brandon. What T-Money giveth, he also can take it back. So if you don't ball, you're losing some damn silver. Now at tight end, I'm going with my man Zach Ertz going against those Detroit Lions, because we know that there's no more DeAndre Hopkins. And my man Kyler and those boys coming off a tough loss against the Rams, I feel like this is going to be a smash spot. We know the Detroit Lions love to play teams tough, so they can make it competitive. If they make it competitive, that means my man Kyler Murray has to do more. And I expect him to do more in the run game, where you got Chase Edmonds and you got cornerback, which should lend itself to my man Zach Ertz with a little play action and some wide open lanes in the middle. So remember, the T is for the money, and the money is something that you will not have in your wallet if Brandon Ayuk does not ball out again this week. Now, producer Dan, go ahead and throw up those standings. Queen Lizzie is back on the throne. Harmon was talking all that noise. Brandon Ayuk balled, and now he's in second. So we're going to have to see how that play out. At least Andy where he need to be right now. And
what happened to me?
See what happened? We got 2 more weeks. Hey, Minty, I know I'm like Minty hold it down on the betting side. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I don't be like, Minty, I don't want to make you feel like I don't be showing any love on here, because we appreciate what you do for here. I just more, like, I like you. That's why I don't say your name. I just like talking trash to pretty much Harmon and Andy, because I don't like them. T-Money love the ladies. The guys not so much, but T-Money love the ladies.
This avocado is feeling mighty fresh. You still can get in on the action in daily fantasy this morning on Yahoo. Our big $1 million baller contest is open, and you can win cash prizes. First place takes home $100,000. Visit the Daily Fantasy Football lobby and join in on the fun. Don't give your family socks for Christmas. I am very excited to join our special guest this week for FFL's community segment. It is the one and only Samantha Holt. She has been writing and podcasting in the fantasy space for 6 years, and she is now an analyst for drroto.com. Thanks for joining us, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz.
You're welcome. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Week 15 is crazy. So who do you think will be the biggest bust in the first round, meaning this week, of the fantasy playoffs?
I think my biggest bust has to be Joe Mixon this week, and I think that's going to be a big bummer for a lot of people. I mean, I just don't like the matchup for him in this one. Denver has been very good against the rush, and the last 5 weeks has actually held out running backs from the end zone on the rush. Joe Mixon hasn't been as effective in the passing game as of late either, so for that reason, I just feel like he's going to get held out of the end zone. He's going to maybe still get you 14 attempts for around 50 yards, but that's nothing that you need to get you to the next round of the playoffs.
I love a spicy take. That is why we invited you on the show. All right, Sam, you're a diehard Steelers fan, so let's talk about Pittsburgh for a second. A bit of an up and down season. So what moves would you like to see your favorite team make this offseason?
Well, the first thing, and I have a shopping list in front of me of what we need, because we have a lot of needs that need to be met. Right off the bat, though, we need to have an absolutely killer draft. We need to go after a rookie quarterback first and foremost. Whether or not we get him in the first round, I'm kind of hoping we wait for the second round on that, because I don't think that Mason Rudolph is our future, and Dwayne Haskins is at the end of his contract. I don't know that they're going to re-up with him. They also need to address the offensive line issues. Obviously, huge issues there. There's a couple rookies that I really like. One out of UCLA, Sean Ryan. Also, we have two safeties and cornerbacks that are going to be out after their contracts end, Terrell Edmonds and Joe Hayden. So we're going to need to address that issue as well.
What if, you said a second round rookie, like what if a vet came in, maybe Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, any of that enticing at all? The Tom Rodgers eyes, any of that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would definitely be enticing. I think an offseason move would be huge. I just don't think that Pittsburgh has the cap space to be much of a draw for a bigger veteran like that. We also are in a division where we're surrounded by these super young quarterbacks. I mean, we're going against Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield is playing crazy hurt this season. I don't think this is actually what Baker's supposed to be looking like with a torn labrum. So this is a very young quarterback class in this division. And to stay competitive, I think we need to get younger.
All right, Sam, thank you so much for joining us on FFL. Please tell everyone where they can find your work and how they can follow you on social.
Absolutely. You can follow all of my work over on drroto.com. I have a Stock Watch article that goes out every Tuesday. You can also find my podcast, the Look Back podcast, that goes live on Mondays with Maddie Kroll, and the Fantasy Debate with Sam and Tate that comes out on Thursdays as well. And then also follow me on Twitter at Samantha R. Holt for all things fun and fantasy and shenanigans.
Thank you so much, Sam. Good luck this week.
Thank you. You too.
Let's get back to more of your questions now. This first one comes from Laura, and Laura asks, Hunter Renfrow, James Conner, or Gabriel Davis? No Emmanuel Sanders, obviously bringing Gabe Davis into the conversation. Andy, you veered away from Renfrow earlier during Make Your Pick. Are you sticking to that in this question?
Yeah, this is rough because I don't want to sit either Renfrow or Connors. I guess I'm going to go James Conner here. I mean, he's been wonderful. He's got a spectacular matchup against Detroit. He scores like 2 touchdowns every week. There is a little bit of a concern with his receiving workload because, of course, earlier in the season when Chase Edmonds was active, like all of the receptions went to Chase Edmonds, and Conner was just a guy who came in, when they got inside the 5 and he plunged into the end zone every time. I think he probably finds the end zone here again, so I'm going to go with Conner, but I would hate to sit Renfrow. I would also like to know what kind of scoring format we have here, because if it's full PPR, I could talk myself into Renfrow, but otherwise it's going to be James Conner.
Fair enough. All right, another question is from Tony, and Tony is pondering his flex spot. It is full PPR, thank you for noting that. Chase Edmonds returning from injury or Myles Gaskin in this smash spot. Matt, which of these two running backs would you prefer to play given the format?
I feel bad that Myles Gaskin here, doesn't get the S that Tank wanted, but James Conner is in the last question gets the S that Tank wanted for Myles Gaskin. You got it in the wrong place here. What are we doing? All right, I like Myles Gaskin here in this one. If there was no James Conner, I think you could go to Chase Edmonds, but again, with Conner out there, he's going to be the banger. He's going to be the guy that scores the touchdowns for this team. Chase Edmonds just doesn't get those money touches down there, near the goal line. It's never happened at any point in his career. Definitely not going to happen if Conner is out there. I go with Gaskin here in the great matchup against the Jets defense. Just like, what are they doing there on defense in New York? I think you play the Dolphins back there.
Minty, Peter has a question for you. He's been quite pleased, in fact. You're on a roll, says Peter. Give us another winning parlay. Money.
Yay. Okay, so this will be a 5-team parlay full of big favorites. I'm taking the Bills, Cardinals, Cowboys, Niners, and Bucks all on the money line. They just have to win. They don't have to cover any spreads. $100 gets you a total payout of $221 and some change. It's a plus 121 parlay, so good luck.
Tank, Felipe has a question, and it's coming your way. It's about running back Saquon Barkley or James Robinson. Format is PPR. Not sure of half or full point, however.
Damn. How far Saquon Barkley is falling. Because, yeah, I'm going with my man James Robinson. I mean, we talked him up all show. I mean, so we ain't going to quit now. Dude got a hell of a matchup. Jags trying to get another win. I mean, and what a better way, if Urban Meyer treated you like trash on the daily, what a better way to stick it to him by not only making him kick rocks in the same week, but then beating the brakes off the Houston Texans. So, yeah, I'm going Jags. I think the Jags come out strong today, especially at home.
Like that. All right, we're going to end on that note and take another break here on Fantasy Football Live. But when we come back, Minty and I run through her best bets for Week 15. Don't go away.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free, live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, Minty, it is time for you and me to debate your best bets for this week. What do you have for us this Sunday?
It was hard to find a best bet, and I struggled, but I am going with the Dallas Cowboys, minus 11.5 over the Giants. I'm breaking 2 of my very sacred rules, betting on a double-digit favorite as my best bet and betting on the Cowboys. I have yet to bet on them all season, but they've been covering machines. They're 10-3 against the spread this season, and Mike Lennon starting for the Giants, not to be mean, but he doesn't stand a chance against Dallas. I mean, Dallas is the better team on both sides of the ball. They're rolling. I can see him blow out the Giants here, just simple as that. So I like him to cover 11.5 points.
It's interesting, Minty. I think we're both feeling the same way, or at least thinking the same way about this matchup. I was surprised that you took a spread with a double-digit factor here, but And to be fair, I'm always a little bit worried about the Cowboys when Tyron Smith isn't going to be active, but I don't think that speaks to how bad the Giants really are. I mean, they are second to last in scoring, tied with the Jaguars in total touchdowns with only 22 on the season. They're being led by Mike Glennon, who, yes, you can watch the tape and see how bad he is, but for a little statistical context, he is averaging under 5.5 YPA in both of his starts this season. So sure, let's go Cowboys. I'll take it.
Oh, let's go Cowboys. All right, for Sunday Night Football, I've got the Bucks minus 11.5, another big spread over the Saints. Now, the Bucks have been doing great all season long, and they lost in Week 8 against the Saints, which is why I think they'll come up big and win big today. New Orleans under Taysom Hill just seem really one-dimensional. The Bucks possess one of the best rushing defenses, so I think they'll be able to contain Alvin Kamara and whatever tricks Taysom has up his sleeve. So I like the Bucks to win big and also blow out the Saints today. Not super confident, but I like this pick over all the other Sunday picks we have.
Yeah, you mentioned the last time these two teams met and how the Bucks fell to the Saints by 9 points. It's also worth noting that I believe Gronkowski only played 5 snaps in that game, was definitely not fully healthy. We know he's back now, though, and we know he's a massive difference maker. In fact, the Bucks with Gronk healthy have the #1 total offense per DVOA. Also worth mentioning, Sean Payton not available because of COVID protocols to be on the sideline and craft up some creativity for Taysom Hill. So yeah, I think the Bucks cover here too.
Yay. Okay, now ending with Monday Night Football, I like the Bears +6 over the Vikings. Oh, sorry. The Vikings have historically not done well in primetime games, and Justin Fields showed a lot of life in his loss against Green Bay last week. I like the Bears catching 6 points here. Even though some of their coaching staff is out, I am aware, but I think there is something to be said about some teams stepping up when coaching staff is out here. The Bears are 6-2 against the spread versus Minnesota, their last 8 meetings. So give me the Bears.
Girl, you're just trying to trigger me with Bears bets in back-to-back weeks. Last week I thought they could cover against the Packers. Look good for a minute too, but nah, lost by 15. This week you're like, oh no, it's cool. The Bears are going to step up. It's a division game. Blah, 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 blah. No, girl, I'm not doing it. You mentioned that the coordinators are missing. The only one that needs to be missing is Matt Nagy, and he's going to be there. So I don't feel good about this. Plus, Allen Robinson isn't available. I like Justin Fields as a sleeper play, but I do not think the Bears are able to cover this. And maybe I'm using a little bit of reverse jinx tank psychology on myself because Mama could use a Christmas present, and let this be it.
Yeah. And I don't think you'll like hearing this either, but I am expecting the Bears to win straight up here as well. But that's all I got this week.
You make everything so messy on my insides, Minty. All right, there's still time to adjust those lineups, so maybe you can clean up your own house. But first, we're going to see who could be off their game. Andy, take it away.
Yeah, it's time for a little off their game. This is where we make you feel bad about your fantasy choices. We're talking about players who are started in at least 50% of Yahoo leagues who might not be in for perhaps their best week. Matt, start us off. Who's off their game this week?
Yeah, remember a few weeks ago, about a month ago, and I was like, yeah, Cam Newton, back with the Panthers, feeling like all a little warm and fuzzies inside because the guy is back. That is all gone. This is about the worst I've felt about the Carolina Panthers in years, perhaps an entire decade at this point, and I do not feel good about DJ Moore going into Buffalo in this game, and it's strange because Moore is actually coming off 2 games back-to-back, 10 targets in both, 100 yards in one, 84 yards in the other. I mean, he has actually been playing well, but good God, the guy's coming in banged up to this matchup. I don't care if Tre'Davious White is not in there. I still have a lot of respect for this Buffalo defense. I think they can shut down this Panthers offense. Plus, I talked about Cam Newton. They're like rotating these guys, is Matt Rule. He's rotating Cam Newton. He's rotating P.J. Walker in there, despite the fact that both of these guys have said, we don't like this. We don't like the rotating. Just play one of us. We get out of rhythm. Also, Matt Rule's talking about maybe Sam Darnold might get in the mix at some point. I mean, just fire the Panthers into the sun. Enough with this team already. Their freaking kicker is hurt in the pregame. P.J. Walker might have to kick for him. What a mess. Don't fool around with any Panthers, even including DJ Moore this week. Ugh.
All right, Tank, who you hating on this week?
Man, like, this dude, like, I know I should have gone on my gut. Kyle Pitts. Because, like, I was down on Kyle Pitts, you know, at the start of the season, and then he gave us, like, that 2-game pump fake where he kind of balled down. We was like, oh, man, like, this dude gonna live up to his expectations. But this is the thing that sealed the deal for me. I was going through the Yahoo Daily Fantasy app, and it said Kyle Pitts has his best game in 7 weeks. 8.6 fantasy points. Like, come on, like, what are we doing, man? Like, he's going against the San Francisco defense that gives up the fewest fantasy points to tight ends. And, like, I feel like if you pick, like, Kyle Pitts high on your fantasy roster, like, your team is probably already in the pits anyway. So if you have to depend on him this week to secure you a fantasy victory, just go ahead and take that P off his last name and go ahead and add an SH, and then that's what you're going to get in your fantasy box score this week.
Oh, it's a good call. It's a good call. It's unfortunately true. I am going to go with Mike Evans this week. I mean, it's Tampa, New Orleans week, which means it's time to talk about the Lattimore versus Mike Evans matchup, which, look, it went fine earlier this season because Evans scored a touchdown, but still, low reception total, low yardage total. You look back at these last 2 years with Tom Brady as quarterback, Evans has only caught 7 balls against the Saints. That is just not enough to pay the fantasy bills in a typical week. You look back over the past 3 seasons, and he's averaging 2 receptions and like 37 receiving yards against Lattimore and the Saints. So just don't like him here. I would greatly prefer Chris Godwin. You're really just hoping for a touchdown from Evans in this one. That's about the only way that he ever scores fantasy-wise against the Saints. So if I had better options, if I'm like that one guy and I've got, you know, 5, 6 different top 10 receivers on my roster, I'd go ahead and play any of them over Mike Evans this week. Now, let's see what kind of nonsense match people are talking about in the survival kit.
If you had a chance to get a do-over, what would you do with that do-over? That's what we asked you people, the people, my people this week. If we could go back and redraft the first round this offseason, who are some of the picks that you would make that you did not make back then, or maybe some picks that you did make? Either way, let's get right into it. We could start nowhere else than Cooper Kupp. I mean, the guy has been literally a fantasy savior. If he's not the most valuable player in fantasy football this year, I don't know who is. I mean, look at where he was drafted. I mean, for God's sakes, most of the fantasy consensus out there, not me, shout out to me on that one, ranked Cooper Kupp behind Robert Woods. He wasn't even the top-ranked wide receiver on his team coming into this year, but he has been a total stone-cold baller. I mean, the guy is gonna break records this year. Him and Matthew Stafford have been in sync all season long. He's been a complete difference maker. It's been a stressful season in fantasy football this year. The entire NFL has been so weird and unpredictable, but the folks who drafted Cooper Kupp, they're just riding in on easy street. Shout out to Matthew Stafford, shout out to Cooper Kupp, and shout out to the Breakfast Club. Speaking of a guy who's been a baller all year long, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he was the right answer in the early rounds of fantasy this year. Like, if you took this guy, imagine if you took him and Cooper Kupp together. I know this because I've got the numbers to prove it. They're the only 2 players who were 80% of the teams that drafted them in August clinched a playoff spot. I mean, it's just been a cheat code so far this year. People thought they were all set with their top 5 picks. Like, hey, look at me, I'm going to get me some shares of Christian McCaffrey. Well, didn't work out so well. The actual right answer was get a late first-round pick or even an early second-round pick and take Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris. Those guys have been incredible, but Taylor stands ahead of them all. This guy has just been so good. I can't wait to see what he does next year. Deebo Samuel. I mean, yeah, I would love to have Deebo Samuel, you know, even if I had to spend a first-round pick. Why not? The 49ers offense, and I feel like we talk about the damn 49ers every single week on this show. They've been tough, right? They've been like tough to predict all year long. We don't quite know what's going on. Guys have not been available or in the lineup for the entire course of the season. The one guy, though, who's been consistent, the one guy who's been a factor from the beginning all the way here to the end, it's been Deebo Samuel, and he's doing it every which way. Even though like his receiving workload has basically evaporated at this point because George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk are absolutely balling out right now, Deebo Samuel's getting carries out of the backfield like he's a legitimate running back. I mean, nobody is better in the open field than Deebo Samuel. This guy is just a complete star. He's a joy to watch. Like, he literally gives you good feelings inside when you see him out there.
We are just moments away from kickoff, so let's get to as many social media questions as we can, and let's start with this first one from Sean. He needs one of these, quote, phenomenal running backs. I sense some sarcasm here. Dontrell Hilliard, Mark Ingram off the COVID list, Devonta Freeman, or Khalil Herbert. Tank, let's begin with you and see what you have to say.
I'm going with Devonta Freeman. I mean, my man Rev was hyping up old boy 3 weeks ago, and nothing's really changed. I mean, he's been getting all the volume out of the Baltimore backfield. My cousin Tyson Williams, I mean, he doesn't exist. He's like Kaiser Sose. He's gone. And then Latavius Murray, even though he comes back off the injury list, he really hasn't been getting that many totes either. So I feel like Devonta Freeman would be a pretty decent play here against the Packers, even though the game script may not go that well in his favor.
Sound logic, Tank. This next question is from Felipe. It is for Matt. It's a quarterback question, Matt. I'm giving it to you because you and I discussed Dak Prescott on last week's Fantasy Football Forecast Wrap-Up pod. Should this human start Dak or Tua Tagovailoa against the Jets?
Ooh, well, hey, this is a little bit tougher than the Brady question earlier, at the very least. But Felipe, I'm still going Dak in this one. I do like Tua, like the matchup, but no Jalen Waddle matters a lot. He's so crucial to that RPO-centric, play-action-heavy offense that they run there. The guy's a difference maker. Like, not having him out there is definitely going to keep Dak ahead of Tua in my rankings this week, even if I do think I want to see something great out of Dak at some point here, like after this whole calf situation. But, yeah, I'm still going Dak over Tua.
All right, Minty, this next one is for you. It's from Aaron. How are you going about handicapping this week's games? That's a good question.
This week is very tough due to all the absences of key players, coaching staff, and rescheduling and whatnot. So my suggestion is betting right before kickoff when you have all that injury news, or just stay away altogether this week. Save your money because there's a couple weeks in football left. So yeah, just be very cautious.
All right, this next question is from TJ. It is PPR, Rashad Penny. Talk about a comeback. A.J. Dillon or Sony Michel. Darrell Henderson obviously active or expected to be on Tuesday. Tank, sending it to you again for this running back query.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is actually kind of tough for me. But I feel like I would probably go with... I mean, that's the thing. I just really don't know how much Darrell Henderson is going to be involved. Like, if he's active again, but yet they're still going to try to heal him up, and then Sony Michel is going to be the one getting most of the work, then I'm going to go with Michel. But if that's not the case, and I think that Rashad Penny is just going to be the guy for Seattle, like, even though I really don't like betting on that Penny, I mean, he looked pretty good last week, so I have to go with Penny.
Okay,
so did I even
next
answer that
one
question?
is from...
I don't know.
You did. You said Penny, and by the way, I would have said the same thing, so fine. Their strength in numbers. Let's go with this next question from Midwest Gal. This human needs some help in a PPR league. Running back Javonte Williams or Donta Foreman. Andy, as the resident Midwesterners, even though I have since moved, I feel like you and I should answer this together. I want you to be wholly honest. I am going to lean towards Javonte Williams by a little bit, even though he's not completely healthy. Because as you taught me, talent breaks the tiebreaker here. So, or talent breaks the tie. So are you in agreement for our Midwestern friend, or are you moving to Foreman?
Yeah, I absolutely am in agreement. The argument for Foreman, of course, is that the matchup is great. But again, he's only playing about a third of the snaps. I would expect that to continue. I think Denver just wants to run the ball like 35, 40 times. So there's plenty of room here for both Melvin and Javonte to have good weeks. And the talent between these two is just not even close. Javonte is obviously a wonderful young back. Going to be probably the featured guy next year. I would easily go Javonte Williams here.
Okay, Andy, I'm going to give you this next one since I kind of muscled my way in, and I want you to be fully brilliant. It's from Marty McFly, full PPR, Donta Foreman, another Foreman question, so you can repeat those talking points. Sony Michel, KJ Osborne, or Michael Gallup?
Oh, this one's hard. Foreman doesn't get any kind of PPR bump, right? They're not gonna really lean on him as a receiver. They'll throw it to him once or twice. That's about the limit of it. Osborne's situation is complicated a little bit by I think the fact that Adam Thielen hasn't been rolled out yet. That would really kneecap his fantasy value. And of course, with Michel, we don't know exactly what Darrell Henderson's role is going to be, but it's probably going to be significant, assuming he's active. So I think I go Foreman here, and I just hope that he plunges into the end zone.
Nice fall into the end zone answer. That must mean the next question is for Matt, and it is from Dustin. Javonte Williams, Sony Michel, Michael Carter, full point PPR.
Yeah, don't love playing Michael Carter first week off injury. Tough matchup against the Miami Dolphins. So let's just go ahead and I'm pretty much back to no Jets. Without Elijah Moore, I think we can just wipe our hands of the Jets basically for the rest of the season. That includes all their dusty receivers. So I feel like, between Sony Michel and Javonte Williams, I really like Sony Michel's matchup. I really think he is going to be the 1A of the committee here because he gives him that punching rhythm style of rushing. But waiting that long, still dealing with a team that has some outbreak right now to it with the LA Rams. I know they're kind of handling it responsibly, just very risky. Still split backfield. I'm going to go with the split backfield with the guy that's actually going to play and still has plenty of juice in Javonte Williams.
All right, we are going to leave with some breaking news. It was just tweeted out that Lamar Jackson is not going to play against the Packers. So no Lamar Jackson. If you had him in your lineups and you were holding out hope, please do remove him. And on that note, that's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thanks for kicking off your Sunday with us. It is the fantasy postseason, so if you need us throughout the week, you can find us on the Fantasy Football Forecast. That is our daily podcast. Every day on Mad Bets. Plus, Matt and Minty will be back in just about 90 minutes on Yahoo Sportsbook Live. And of course, we'll see you back here next Sunday, hopefully at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all of your fantasy teams in Week 15.